This is Judith Lay welcoming you to Manx Radio and to the podcast of this week's edition of At Your Service. Manx Radio! They didn't want me because I was black and I was a woman. At the annual Methodist conference, which ended a few days ago, they've been celebrating 50 years of women being allowed to be presbyters, ordained ministers in the Methodist Church. But as we'll discover today, it's not been an easy journey. We'll also go travelling as Angela Southern takes us from St Mark's to Sierra Leone, all from the comfort of your armchair. But first, let me take you to St Thomas's Church here in Douglas, to last Sunday's Festival of Hymns, the first event organised by the freshly revived Isle of Man Church Music Association. Over 100 people were there, and it was, as the organisers hoped, a big sing. There were choirs from a number of different churches and lots of individual singers too. And as the publicity promised, the hymns were well known with a good mix of styles to reflect different traditions. Dr. Peter Littman, Director of Music at the Cathedral in Peel, is also the Chair of the Isle of Man Church Music Association, and he directed the massed choir at St Thomas's. Reverend Joanna Fisher, curate at Kirkbraden and in charge of administration of the association, together with Reverend Liz Hull, Vicar of St Thomas's, planned and led last Sunday's service. The festival organist was Gareth Moore.
It's been fantastic, and we really didn't know what interest would be in the resurgence of the festival. We thought we'd give it a go, put something on and see how many people came, and as you say, 100 people came, and it was great. And it's just so heartening to see people still interested in church music and wanting to be part of something like today. People are very busy, and this is a busy Sunday, there's lots on, but yet still 100 people came to support it, and I think that shows that there is still a desire for church music.
I was looking around and there were so many different denominations, so many different churches represented. The Salvation Army, Methodists, Anglicans, Roman Catholics.
Yes, everybody was here, and I think the service reflected something for each of those denominations, something that they would recognise and could connect with.
So what would you like now, ideally, Gareth, what would you like to happen next?
Well, it would be just wonderful to build on this. Maybe we could open it up to bring some school choirs in. I think this just puts choral singing on the map a little bit more. For so many people, they've been involved in church music growing up, but because of life and the way life is now, it kind of gets put to the back burner. If we can just bring this out in a missional kind of way, it's just a great way to get people to re-engage with worship, with music. And that would be my hope, that side of things brings more people into both singing and it back into church. It's music that people connect with, particularly hymn arrangements, things like we sang today in Christ Alone, Such Love. There are other arrangements like that for things like Be Still for the Presence of the Lord, Make Me a Channel of Your Peace. They're recognisable songs that people might know already, but with a nice, clear message.
So, watch this space.
To be honest, I'm not actually on the committee for the music festival, but those that are really committed to bringing this forward and doing something very special. It's lovely to play for something like this. It's just great to get everybody together, to have a good sing, I can have a good play, and everyone's doing what they love.
And no one was in any hurry to leave as Gareth Moore played at the conclusion of last Sunday's Festival of Hymns in St Thomas's Church. The conference is the governing body of the Methodist Church in England, Scotland, Wales, the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man. It meets annually to discuss matters affecting the life of the Church, the nation and the world. And this year's week-long conference has just ended. The conference has a president, always a presbyter or ordained minister, and a vice president who's always a layperson. But they work so closely together that they're often simply called the presidency. They set a theme for their year in office and spend most of their year visiting Methodist churches throughout the connection, meeting people, encouraging them and learning from the work being done in the name of Methodism today. This year's presidency is Reverend Helen Cameron and Mrs. Carolyn Godfrey, and we look forward to welcoming them to the island sometime in the coming year. The conference is also a place for worship and celebration, and this year the celebration was the 50th anniversary of women being allowed to be presbyters, ordained ministers in the Methodist Church. But it's not been an easy journey. Rev'd Sonia Hicks was president of conference for the year starting in June 2021. She was the first black woman ever to hold the post. Listen now as she tells her story.
When I was 14 years old, I was at my local Methodist church. I'd been a member for about a year, and my minister kept saying, "I think you should be a Methodist minister." And I just thought, well, you know what? He has nothing better to say. You know, doctors want to get doctors, nurses want to get nurses, teachers want to get teachers, ministers want to get ministers. And I thought, I'm not interested in that job. It's just for old people, old white people who are men. And then one day he came to me and said, "Do you want to learn more about God?" Well, I always wanted to know more about God. I was at church more than I was at home. I just loved everything about church. And so I said yes. And he gave me a note to preach, which is not quite what I had in mind. But then one day I heard a sermon, and it was a sermon that talked about never say to God, "I can't" or "I won't," but say to God, "I'll try." So I thought, am I saying to God I can't or won't about ordination when I should actually just say to God, "I'll try"? I said to God, I had my last local preacher's exam to take. We used to do 4 exams then. And I said, if I get a C and above, I'll candidate, I'll go for it. And if I don't, I won't have to worry about it. And it was New Testament, and my Bible knowledge was always a little bit sketchy. So I thought, it's going to be a safe one here. And I got a B. I couldn't believe it. A C, I could have said it was a mistake. You couldn't fight against it. So I candidated. I don't see myself as minister material. I have never done. And when I spoke to my best friend, who's a Muslim, at the time about, oh, well, I'm doing more in the church and actually I might be working full time for the church. She just said, we always knew you were going to do that. My family just thought it was just the church had made the biggest mistake. My sister said, she's just so noisy. How can somebody like that be a minister? My mother said, but you can't play the piano. How can you be a minister? When my minister came to me and said to me, I think you should be a Methodist minister, I suppose it was the first real moment of affirmation that I'd ever had in my family. But actually, ordination itself was a very profound effect on me. I'd gone to college for 3 years, and then my husband and I both came out and we job shared, and we were in a circuit where we shared 3 churches. It was a really bruising time. People didn't want me because I was black, and they said that. And they also didn't really want me to be their minister because I was a woman. And in fact, someone proudly came up to me after I'd been there for a few weeks and said, we know that women shouldn't be ministers because we've had Bible studies about it, and we know that the Bible tells us that women should keep quiet. And I remember going for my final interview for ordination with the church, and all I did was sit with my superintendent and cry. And all the other committee just said, we are so sorry, Sonia. We are so sorry. I think as time has gone on, and I've been in this role now for over 30 years, I think people are less surprised, my family are less surprised. They just think it makes sense of all the bits of me that they could never make sense of. The bit of me, I think, from when I was small, that hated injustice. I've always hated injustice, and I've always been passionate about how does God see this injustice, and what does God want me to do and say about this injustice. It's important for me to bring all of Sonia into this role. None of us should be like a generic minister. I think we should always be of ourselves. For all those women who gave it all they could in those early years, it must have been so difficult. And because they kept on in that pathway, it made the pathway wider for the rest of us to follow. I don't think there's an experience in ministry which hasn't helped me to grow. Even that very first one, in the first 2 years of ministry, I am who I am because of that experience. If someone had asked me the question, why are you going for ordination? I wouldn't have had an answer. But at the ordination service, when they ask that question, do you think they are worthy? And the congregation responds, they are worthy. I heard God saying to me, you are worthy, Sonia, not because a church says you are worthy, but because I have said you are worthy, and because this Methodist Church has confirmed that in all that they have seen and done. I still feel God's call on my life. I still feel God saying to me, come, Sonia, let's play. I am still here because I still hear God's call, loud and clear.
Rev'd Sonia Hicks, who in 2021 became the first black woman to be elected President of Conference, reflecting on her own experiences as the Methodist Church celebrates 50 years of the ordination of women.
This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread.
It's time to go travelling in the company of Angela Southern. But our journey begins in Angela's home church. Her roots are firmly planted in Ballagarey Chapel in St Mark's.
Absolutely. From 3 years old, I was brought to Sunday school there, and I left for a little while when I got married and moved to Laxey, but then moved back to South, and I've been there. Mona Ratcliffe asked me if I'd be a Sunday school teacher 35 years ago, and although we have no Sunday school now, we have Messy Church, and I'm involved with that.
I've made a few visits to the chapel, but with a long interval in between. And now you have this beautiful sun lounge. You've made developments to the chapel. You've shaped it to reach out to the community. But it's all been underpinned with a very strong prayer movement, hasn't it?
Very much so. At the time when we were thinking about the added conservatory, we had the Reverend Kath Corkish as our minister, and she was really very encouraging in that, being a house of prayer. So it's 7 years now, I think, since the conservatory was opened. And as you know, we have tea at 3 last Thursday every month, which is very popular. But it's opened the whole building out for more use, really, than just a Sunday.
Now, let me pick you up on something that you've said. You said you want to be a house of prayer. So prayer isn't something that just happens on a Sunday, and
No.
It's much more intentional. Tell me a bit about that.
Yes, it must be 10 years or so at least now. We started meeting 7:30 every morning up at the chapel for prayers for the community. We have a list for healing. And then when COVID came, we started doing it on Zoom. So every morning now we still continue on Zoom. We don't make the trip up to the chapel. There's probably up to 10 of us that can meet, and we pray every day.
So, from a really strong base here in Ballagarey, now we're going to go a lot further afield. You have been to Sierra Leone, not just representing the Isle of Man, but in fact representing the Methodist Church of Great Britain.
It follows on from a trip I made 13 years ago with Phil Crane, who was Christian Aid coordinator on the island at that time. And the Isle of Man government had given Sierra Leone government money for certain projects. Christian Aid were the partners in Sierra Leone who were looking after these projects, and Phil and a group of us went out to just see that the money was getting spent in the right way. When we were there, we had a service one Sunday morning, and the Sierra Leone Methodist Church asked if we could be twinned with the Isle of Man Methodist Church. So back in February 2009, I think it was now, the Isle of Man twinned with Sierra Leone.
So this was a follow-up to it?
Yes, up until only the last year or so, the British Methodist Church have always been alongside the Sierra Leone Methodist Church, but now they've cut off any funding to them. They have to survive on their own out there. But because of the twinning, the Isle of Man was asked to send a representative for the British Methodist Church, and they looked to the group that went away 13 years ago, and I was asked if I would go.
Now, that must be fascinating to go back with a gap of 13 years. So, was it encouraging, disappointing? How did you find it?
I think encouraging. When we were there 13 years ago, we spent quite a lot of time out in the provinces. This time we didn't. We were 10 days in Freetown, the capital, which is the city. The first thing I noticed was the airport. Last time we went, it was like going into Derby. It was little more than Nissen huts. Now they've got a state-of-the-art new airport. They've even got one of these scanners that can look at your liquids and electrics without taking them out of your bag, which is more than what the Isle of Man has. So that was the first thing that we noticed. It's still very much a poor country, very poor. I think when we were there previously, it was second poorest in the world, but it's about seventh poorest now. But what they have, they are willing to share with you. We had this 5-day conference in one of the local churches, and all the members of that church fed us every day with a hot meal. So that in itself, with little money going around, was really great hospitality and fellowship. The women of the church did it. And the women are just amazing. When they go to just an ordinary service on a Sunday, they're dressed for a wedding. They really do go to worship and praise the Lord. It is incredible.
Tell me about the services themselves. How would they compare with ours?
About 3 times as long.
Lots of music, lots of singing?
Lots of music, a lot of worship time. One other evening went to a service where 4 new presbyters were getting ordained. That was 3.5 hours. and they have communion at every service. And we sang 4 hymns for the time for everyone to get through the communion. There's that many that go through. But they say their numbers are decreasing. I mean, it is a Muslim country and a Christian country. Muslims and Christians work very well alongside each other. If you went to a Muslim meeting, they would have Christian prayers and vice versa. If the Christians knew there were Muslims with them, they would have Muslim prayers as well. So no conflict there whatsoever. The Methodist Church out there runs primary schools and a hospital. But they're finding in the primary schools, especially in the provinces, that they are struggling to get Christian head teachers. Never mind Methodist head teachers, but Christian head teachers. They have to maybe go for a Muslim teacher, and they aren't passing on the core values of Christianity to the young children, which the church looks at as their reservoir to bring through to the church. We were looked after by mission partners out in Sierra Leone, the Reverend Sylvester and Rachel Day, who are actually coming to the island later in July. And they looked after us very well. Sierra Leone has got beautiful beaches, but it's no longer a holiday destination ever since they had the Civil War 20 odd years ago now. People don't go there on holiday, which is unfortunate. I mean, I found it very hard. We were going into this church building every day for the conference, and there'd be beggars outside and poor people. And because maybe we were white, they felt that we had money to give them, but we were told, if you give to one, you have to give to them all. But it was very hard walking past them. It's still like shanty towns, some of the places that they still live, mud huts with a tin roof. Within our own churches, the mission partners, Rachel and Sylvester, are doing an amazing work out there. They're both ordained ministers, but Rachel's teaching in the College of Theology and Sylvester's working in the conference office, changing a lot of the strategy and policies to try and bring them up to date. I went out with Louise Whiteleg, who's the current Christian Aid coordinator on the island, and Louise was amazing spreading the word of the Isle of Man. Previously, when we were twinned, it was one church in Freetown. The rest of Sierra Leone didn't know about the Isle of Man, but they certainly do now. They have 32 districts, which is the same as the amount of Methodist chapels on the island, and Louise brought a package out including Manx flags and information on the island and pens and things, and each package was handed out to a member of each circuit throughout the whole country. And at the end of the conference, they passed a resolution that they would have an Isle of Man Day. So the last Sunday in February, they are going to remember within their churches the Isle of Man. As we already do here on the island, we have a Sierra Leone Sunday in February. They are now going to have an Isle of Man Sunday. She actually had local members of chapels here write postcards before we went with prayers and just saying a little bit about themselves. And we took these postcards out to Sierra Leone and distributed them at the conference. And then she went on a mission to find postcards in Sierra Leone, which she did find. I think there was one place in Freetown. She got these postcards, brought them back to the conference and got the members there to write a message, and we've brought them back to the Isle of Man. So we'll be distributing them out to the chapels here.
Actually, you were an ideal partnership. You had formal duties that you had to do. You had the conference to attend. But Louise had the freedom to go out and explore. These are the things that make the bonds.
Yeah, these people will never, ever come to the Isle of Man. While we were there was a new bishop installed. He will no doubt come at some point, but the ordinary person will never come to the Isle of Man, and they were very interested in us.
But do you think it makes it more special to them for the fact that it's people who will never see them yet still care about them?
Yes, very much so. We did meet up with Women's Network and Women's Fellowship, and we did talk about maybe having a Zoom international Bible study. So if we could get that going, that would be more with the ordinary people out there, the ordinary members of the chapel.
Angela, thank you so much. It's been great to talk and get a real feel for the experience that you had.
Yes.
Let's just finish back in Ballagarey. Mm-hmm. Now, you said you started 35 years ago as a Sunday school teacher, and Sunday school has, in many areas, transformed into messy church.
Yes.
Do you find that an easy thing to invite people along to?
Yes, I think so. It is a lot friendlier way, I think, for children especially. I mean, they're not allowed to come on their own. Their parents or grandparents are somebody has to come with them. But just contrasting Sunday school here with that in Sierra Leone, it's still very popular in Sierra Leone because they don't have other pastimes like football or pony riding or athletics or something to detract them. They have a syllabus when they go into Sunday school, and they still have to take an exam at the end of every year. So, yeah, Messy Church is a lot freer, a lot more fun. It's the last Saturday in every month from 10:30 till midday. It often goes over midday because we provide lunch for everybody as well.
So if somebody would like to give it a try, they can come along to Ballagarey Methodist Chapel, St Mark's, and I guess a break for the summer now?
Yes, July, it always falls on the Southern Agricultural Show Day, so a lot of us are involved down there. So we break then because it's the school holidays as well. And August, we don't have it because there's so many on holiday. So we'll meet again at the end of September. Just pop in, 10:30, yeah, you'll be made very welcome.
Angela Southern, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning and for being a very interesting guest.
Thank you, Judith.
This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm lost without you.
And now, as usual, we'll finish with a look at our notice board. And there's lots happening today. Ballagarey Chapel celebrate their anniversary today with a special service this afternoon at 2:30. Mrs. Pauline Corlett will preach. Mr. Bill Corlett is the guest soloist, and there's a warm welcome for everyone. Bride Methodist Church celebrate their Sunday school anniversary today with a service this afternoon at 4:00, led by Reverend Joe Smart. The Sunday school children will be taking part, and the service will be followed by afternoon tea. This is the final day of the Southern Flower Festival, with still some time today to visit the participating churches, as they're all open until 4:00. The theme is By the Seaside, another celebration of 200 years of the RNLI. Churches taking part are Russian Parish Church in Port Erin, the Abbey Church in Ballasalla, Maloo Parish Church, Arbury Parish Church, St Mary on the Harbour in Castletown, and St Mark's Parish Church. You might like to leave your visit to St Mark's until later this afternoon, because there'll be a lovely evensong in St Mark's Church tonight at 6:30. Set amidst the last moments of the Flower Festival displays, a peaceful, prayerful time with a warm welcome for everyone. And also this evening at 6:30, the Mariners Choir will be in St Luke's Church in Baldwin, and the preacher will be Reverend Canon Janice Ward. As usual, the service will be followed by supper and community hymn singing. Also tonight, there's a summer anniversary concert service at Dalby Church and Schoolrooms, also starting at 6:30. This is a celebration of the 185th anniversary of Dalby Church and the 40th anniversary of the Friends of Dalby Church, with a concert service led by Manx Voices, who'll perform a selection of choir pieces and also lead the community hymn singing. The concert will be followed by a Dalby Tay in the schoolrooms, and everyone is welcome. Looking to the week ahead, and this Wednesday, the weekly concert in St Thomas's Church here in Douglas will be given by the Glenfaber Chorale, conducted by Mrs Muriel Corkish, starting at the usual time of 7:45. It's free admission with a retiring collection and refreshments afterwards, and St Thomas's Church is just off Douglas Promenade, close to the Gaiety Theatre and Villa Marina complex. The Thursday evening concerts, usually held in St Catherine's Church in Port Erin, have a new venue this year due to work taking place in the church. They'll be held in the Erin Arts Centre, except for the concert this week. On Thursday the 11th, the concert by Castle Rushen High School will be in Rushen Parish Church, and it'll start at 7:30. As usual, admission is free with a retiring collection, and there'll be refreshments after the concert. On Saturday the 13th, there's another event in Ballagarey Methodist Chapel. It's a coffee morning when the kettle will be boiling between 10 and 12 noon. And I'm looking forward to being at Ballagarey the following day. That's next Sunday the 14th, for an animal blessing service starting at 3 o'clock, with a warm welcome for all creatures, great and small. And another service next Sunday the 14th is the annual Heritage Service organised by the Friends of Onken Heritage. It'll be next Sunday at 3 o'clock in Abbeylands Chapel. The preacher is Reverend Rebecca Ingrall. There'll be refreshments after the service, and all are welcome. And finally, the last Mariners service of this season is next Sunday evening at the Howe Chapel at the usual time of 6:30. And I'm afraid that's all that we have time for now. But I'll be back later in our virtual lounge tonight from 9 o'clock onwards. Virtually everything you'll need to round off your day. But the easy listening music and your requests and dedications are very real, and I'd love you to join me if you can. And so, until whenever we meet again, this is Judith saying thank you for listening, and I wish you and those you love a blessed and peaceful week. And a very good morning.